To live chat Thursday evening with Keith Kalish, how to build your own home. I want to give you a little a thought as people start to chime in. It has to do with changes, change orders, and changes. And I want to give some emphasis here to why this is such an important thing, especially for owner builders, because they don't know that they can actually be a pain in the butt, and they don't need to be. And this is why some subcontractors don't want to bid for you, and I want to give you some headway on avoiding being a difficult client. Right? What is a change? A change happens when you've got plans, architectural plans, structural plans, engineered plans, all your geology is done, your budget is set, and then you start making changes. This can aggravate a general contractor. This can aggravate a general contractor quite a bit. Most general contractors that I know will charge you $150, $250, $500 no matter what the change is. I know one general contractor in town here, and he will charge $100 for any change no matter what. He says if you're going to make a change, it's going to cost you $100. I'm going to explain why a change is such a hard thing for a general contractor to manage, and why you want to avoid them as much as you can as an owner builder. I can get a change like moving a wall, moving a fireplace, moving a door. And every time I get a change, I have to follow through with all of my subcontractors to make sure they're on board for that same change. My printing of plans alone is $85. If I make a change and I don't make it on the plans, then if the plans go missing, a lot of other subcontractors are going to have their plans on the phone. And so they're going to go off the plans that I sent them that they bid off of. And if I've made changes, then I have to make sure they get the plans, or I have to have a whole new set sent to them. That means a communication nightmare. That means that if they have to know that they're working off the most recent plans. And if you're making changes during the course ad hoc, that makes it really, really difficult for everybody. Moving a wall changes dimensions across the board, flooring, your framer, your plumber, you name it. Okay. So the best thing you can do is to take more time in the design phase of your home. Make sure that everything is where and what you want in the place you want it to be. During my consulting on some of my students that I do consulting work for, I demand that they go back and forth with me, back and forth with each other, back and forth with the architect, maybe even get a designer involved, making sure they go back and forth and back and forth. Everything is where they want it to be and what they want it to be. Like on a client just sent me some plans this morning. I looked at them real quickly. I noticed that the stairs were going down in one way and up another way. And I says, if you inverted the stairs going this way, now you capture the opportunity for storage inside that stairwell, inside the under the stairs, which is additional pantry. They never even thought of that. And more than likely that could have come up during framing, but we caught it at the design phase. They flipped everything and everything's great. It's going to work out great for the client. That's what I'm talking about. Thinking, and it's really hard for people to think three-dimensionally. They want to see it first, and then they start making their changes. You can't do that. You have to be able to allow for your designer, your architect. You have to allow for your partner, your wife or husband, to see those things that you can't see. If you go in there and start making changes, if you have the money for it, great, but it's going to be a headache for people. Just keep that in mind before you start to build, before you start to frame things up, that you've thought through things, you've made up your mind, you've made your decision. Some changes are going to come up and you just can't help it. Like this morning on another set of plans, I found that the stove was right next to the refrigerator. And my wife is a realtor right there, and she can tell you what kind of a nightmare that's going to be. A fridge needs more elbow room than you can imagine. If you have more space between the stove and the fridge, it's going to allow that fridge to open up wide and not have a problem. So we caught that right away. If that wasn't caught, more than likely that's going to surface up in the cabinetry, and everything's going to get shifted. And because they have to move things, let's just see if we can't find a better place for a stove. And once you do that, you start changing the pipeline for gas. You start changing the the layout for electrical, you start changing a lot of stuff. So thinking through things and having somebody that's got some experience with cabinetry and layout, that's done this many times before, they're going to catch some of these things, and you can avoid excessive changes. That's the real trick with owner builders. The more you can prepare in advance so that you don't run into, oh, let's just change it here. And they think it's all fun and dandy. They think it's okay. It's not fun. I've been a builder now for 25 years, and I've dealt with multi-million-dollar homes, and I've dealt with affordable housing homes. And you want to know who makes the most changes? Those that are in the lower range affordable housing. They make an enormous amount of changes because they don't think through the cost. They don't think through, wait a minute. A real experienced person who's been through expending a lot of money on stuff, they take time to design their home. And I've dealt with high-end luxury, multi-million. I've dealt with people who can barely afford 200,000 on a home. And it's typically those that aren't really, that don't have that budget for a higher end home. They tend to make a lot of changes. Here's a really interesting story. I was building affordable housing at one time, and then over the weekend, the owners came in and they put in a fireplace with their friends. They put in a fireplace and a flue, changed the layout of everything, messed the walls. The gas line was already in and it hadn't been piped to there. There was no power. It messed everything up. And so they just thought that they could do it because it was their home, but it wasn't designed. It wasn't situated for it. And they messed up a shear wall. And someday I'll talk about shear walls. But anyway, let's take some questions from people. I wanted to give a reiteration of how important it is to really know and plan and have everything up front ready to go, and you've thought through things in advance. You don't start making changes through the process. It can cause your subcontractors a nightmare. And that's why a lot of subcontractors, if they get whiff that you're an owner builder and not an experienced builder, they're going to, oh man, I'm going to go through this with an owner builder. You don't need that stigma. And if you take your time and be patient, I just saw some plans yesterday, probably the best plans I've seen in a long time, with a client that I'm mentoring, and they've taken some time. You can tell that they're really patient with the layout of your home, and you know who you are. All right, let's take a question from Val Smith. Hi, I emailed a message a while back. The email address I used to sign up on the one on Facebook are different, but it is still me. How can I get this fixed so I'm in the group?
I got that taken care of.
Okay, my wife said she's got that taken care of, so that's all taken care of. Brent asks a question. Do you ever use spray foam at the roof line to do a conditioned attic? I've done that a couple of times. It's a little more costly than rigid foam. At the framing stage, or even at the drywall stage, or even at the insulation stage, I've asked for an insulator to go ahead and create a conditioned space for me, and they do that with rigid foam. Spray foam, you can. There's a lot of insulating companies that aren't really familiar with spray foam. I just hired one just for the fun of it to see if they were experienced, and they went and ordered an online kit of closed cell spray foam, and then they did it themselves. Well, I could have ordered that $300-400 and spray it on there. So it's not that hard to create the conditioned space you need. And there's a lot of kits online, and you can order those, and you can measure how much square footage you need. Go ahead and spray the under deck of the roof, and you can do that. It's not that costly. I think the last one I priced at was about $350 for a gallon tank. And that should cover maybe about 32 square feet, which is equal to a full sheet of OSB. But find out how much square footage it will take, and then how deep that will cover on the underdeck. But it's a good idea. Yeah, I've seen many people do that. Chris Martin asks, so what do you think about hybrid hot water heaters? Hybrid being a combination between electric and gas, or hybrid in geothermal. I'm not quite sure what you mean by hybrid. I'm a big fan of gas, tankless water heaters, endless water, on-demand water. Now in Europe, it's a lot of those tankless water heaters are on electricity. They're not on gas. And tankless water heaters, or any hybrid water heater that's electrically driven, that's a little more temperamental than the gas ones. I've got a beast of a tankless water heater in my house that I put in. It's now over 20 years old. And I've only replaced the motherboard, but I did that after 6 months of use because it was defective. They made a better one. Since then, I haven't had a problem with that tankless water heater. And it just takes a 15 amp circuit to run the display. That's all for the most part. And then it's on demand gas. But I do hook it up to a soft water system, and that really helps keep it clean. If you're not going to run it through a soft water system, then that tankless, whatever the hybrid electric, whatever you want to call it, it's going to have all that hard water run through it, and that's where it's going to run a problem. The ones I don't like are the thermostats that are inside the pipe, and they can get corroded and clogged. There's some that will have the thermostat connected as part of the pipe system, not inside the pipe, so it's not going to get corroded over. Just do a lot of research on that. I know Matt Reisinger just did a major video on tankless or not tankless, and he went through the gamut, even cut some tankless water heaters right in half to try to dissect them. So believe it or not, there were some really good tankless water heaters on the market, 10, 15 years ago, but because of the way things are consolidating into just a few suppliers. So, but there's some good ones still out there. See, KP Singh, I hope I said that right, KP. Can you go over the idea? Let's say my family member buys the land under their name and hires my company as a builder. If you can provide more details about it, thank you so much. So is your company a general contracting company? Are you a licensed general contractor? If you're not a licensed general contractor, then in that state, more than likely, you cannot build that home for a third party. Now, if it's family members, they can hire you as a construction supervisor or a construction manager to manage that build, but you can't quote unquote act as a general contractor. Now, what does that mean? A general contractor is someone who hires somebody else. They hire a third party, a framer, a concrete, excavator, electrician. They hire them and they pay them under their license. Now, a construction manager or a site supervisor, they just manage the site. You are the one paying the bills and the invoices are coming to you. They're just telling you that, hey, we're good to pay that, or we're good to tell the electrician to come on board. He can start now. That the site supervisor is just managing the flow of things on site. If they're good and if they're worth it, that's what they do. Now, you can hire just about anybody to do that. You don't need to be licensed to be an on-site supervisor, an on-site construction manager. So I hope that answers your question for you. All right. Val says, thank you. Val has a question. So if you have a change for walls or stairs after your plans are approved, but before building, should you take the time and make that change right now? Yes. Especially before you get the permit. Anything you can change and do before you finalize the permit, the better. Now, I had a client make a change after the permitting phase and after the budgeting phase, and that's what you want to avoid. If you want to make the change, try to get it before the permit phase. And if it's going to change that budget, make that budget change and reflect that change now before you solidify everything, especially before you go to the bank. Okay. Hope that answers your question. Robert asks a question. What are your thoughts on roofing material for high snow load mountain homes? That's my framer right there. I got to turn my phone off. And I may turn it off. He's now asking me a question on a change that I sent to him. Okay. Roof load material for high snow load mountain homes. Is the aluminum shingle better than a metal standing seam roof? Have a very steep roof, 1612 pitch. There's no such thing as a 1612 pitch. There's a 1212 pitch. 1612 is like vertical. Are you talking about the wall? I actually had this question by my roofer. He sent it this morning. And he said, Keith, I don't understand this. I've never seen a 1612 pitch. And I emailed him back and I said, Cody, I think that's a 1212 pitch. I think that's a typo. because if you get to 1612, I have to double check that one. The highest I've done is a 1212. I've done 1112 and some 1212 pitch, but that's like an A-frame. That's literally like that. You're probably talking about something that's like that, but I don't know what kind of a frame structure that 12 would be, but it would be 1212, 1216. That's crazy. You wouldn't any snow load. It would slide right off that home. Standing seam, aluminum shingle, either one's good. Aluminum shingle has a better ability to put snow stops on the roof, and a snow stop is guys, I have one right in my shelf here. It's a stick that goes underneath the shingles, and then it pops up like this, and so snow can stop on the roof just like that. Well, with the aluminum shingle, you can slide those snow stops right under the shingle, and it would stop the snow and not slide off right away. With standing seam, you got to screw those snow stops right through the seam, and you run the risk of it penetrating right through the shingle structure. So that's my only caveat with that. The other caveat I have is that standing seam is typically made out of a metal or galvanized metal that has an ability to fade paint over time. It doesn't hold the paint, and it fades quicker. Aluminum shingle has a 50-year warranty on the paint, and it's not going to fade. I can actually show you pictures of roofs I did 15, 20, 25 years ago, and they still have not faded. And so that's why I like the aluminum shingle. Plus, I like the look better. So hope that answers your question for you. My mom and I are trying to buy land and build a house. This is from KP. How can I get the best prices on materials and labor? I know you mentioned people making a builder style email, etc. It's very good. I've had some of my best students, they actually create an email, and they call it Joe's Construction or Bill's Buildings and Better at yahoo.com or me.com or gmail.com. It's not that hard to find an email and create it. And that way, when you're sending out plans, structural and architectural, you now can send it from that building and then create a funky logo. You can go to fiverr.com, have somebody create a just funky label for you for $5 and put that at the bottom of the signature of the email, your address, a post office box, whatever. And for a nominal fee, $12 altogether, maybe you're professional looking. So it's a way to make yourself not look like an owner builder. So, and as far as buying land, how can I get the best prices on materials and labor? Shop around. It's a little bit of a headache, but the box stores are going to be cheaper on the materials. However, you're going to deal with some nightmares on scheduling, nightmares on delivery, nightmares on communication. They won't deliver on time. They'll delay it, and you don't know what you're going to get. And so you get cheap price, terrible service. You go to a lumber yard that's got experience. We deal with a lot of builders all the time. They will give you a cut list. A really experienced lumber yard, you give them the plans, they'll give you a cut list and a budget based upon the entire plans. The box stores won't do that. So that's the caveat with going cheap. There's a cost benefit for using experienced lumber yards. So you have to find out where you really want to put your money. Do you want to put your money in the house and you run the hard effort of trying to get a cut list and your waste material that you're going to factor in for the whole framing of the home? Here's a side note. I'm working with a framer right now. He just called. That was on the phone. We're going to try to come up with a plan to get a cut list for people at a nominal price. I've been using plans all over the place. I get an email almost every single day because of my website, my professional website, an email from somebody saying, "Hey, I can do cost estimating for you. I can do your takeoff lists." Almost every day, somebody thinks they can start a business and do that for me. I just hired probably the most prestigious company in the company. I won't mention their name. And I hired them to do a cut list for me. I had to return 2 trailer loads of lumber. And we paid $600 for this cut list. And so I'm saying to myself, oh, we could have done a better job than that. My framer could have done a better job than that. So I'm thinking about trying to find my framer, one or two framers, even some retired framers that really know the industry. And you give a cut list, you'll do better than these yahoos that are sitting behind a desk without any experience in framing. So sorry for a little tangent there. I'm on a rant today because of some issues with regard to that topic. I hope that answers your question, KP. Um, you pay for what you get. Really, that's really what it get. When it boils down to it, you pay for what you get, and what are you willing to pay for, and what are you willing to take a headache on? So, another question by Val. Plans are approved and permit has been issued. Should we just leave it or consider making it now?
The change.
Let's see. Okay, same question. I think I got an email from another student asking this question. They were wanting to know if they should wait a couple months, given where the economy is going, and if they should wait a couple months and for getting the foundation started. And I mentioned back that I don't see concrete going up much. Things typically will go down a little bit in the fall because gas prices go down. But I've only seen gas prices go down maybe 25 cents in the past year, fluctuating up and down. That's not much of an impact on the total cost of materials. Now, if gas or barrel or the futures of oil are looking low and really, really low, you'll find in the next election cycle, because of who's running for president, you're going to watch oil prices go down because the current executive office doesn't want to look bad at that time. So they'll force the markets to show a better picture for themselves. If you're in tune with the markets and political influence on markets, that's a real good sign for how things are going to go. But I don't see prices going too much this fall.
Val was talking about the change. He had that question up above.
Okay.
If you have a change for walls and stairs.
Oh, Val, regarding change for the wall.
Yeah.
Should we just leave it? If plans are approved by the city, or just yourself. If it's with the city, you might want to leave it. Now, here's an issue. If you've got plans and they're approved and you've got them on site in a tube and your permit comes to inspect, your inspector comes to inspect, if they're smart, they'll catch issues and they'll say, hey, this does not match up with plans. About 25% of your inspectors will catch it. About 75% won't. And so they'll just come in. If you're in a rural area and it's not very busy, or it could be very busy, I've seen inspectors just miss huge things. And some inspectors I see catch all kinds of weird things and bring up things that they think are part of the code, but they're not a part of the code. So you run the risk of now I have to submit it anyway, and they'll red flag you until they update the plans. And when they have the new plans approved, they have to approve the new plans, then you can keep going again. You just have to gauge on how difficult your permitting office is going to be. I hope that answers your question, because you're going to pay for the structural engineer, the architect, and you're going to pay for new plans to be printed up, and you have to weigh those costs. As a builder, I sometimes don't even go that route, and I save the $300 to $800 or whatever more it would be and move forward with it, because the change isn't going to be that much of an issue, especially if it's non-structural. So
if it's a big change,
you better make that change. Okay. Tyler asked a question. I'm currently not a licensed general contractor. I understand that technically I'm not supposed to be an owner builder and construct a residential property for rental purposes. Any way around this? Check with your state. In California, of all places, you would think this is not the case, but in California, you can owner build a fourplex. All right, and a lot of other states you can, but you just can't sell that within 2 years. So you want to find out what your state requirements are, what they allow, what they don't allow, and how much you can go for it. In fact, I think in California you can do 2 fourplexes within a 2-year period. That's when I last checked the law, the code in California. So check your state. It's not hard. Owner builder allowances, or what can you do as an owner builder in your state, and you should be able to find it on the first or second page of a typical search engine. So KP says, thank you. Robert says, do your framers put up the house wrap, or is that the siding contractor's job? Which sub does your window and your door installed? Good question. The siding contractor puts up either the vapor barrier or the water membrane. It's typically your siding contractor, not your framer. And as for windows, that's your framer. Make sure that when they do give a bid, that they include the install of the windows. And same with the exterior doors only, not the interior doors. They will put in the exterior doors as part of that whole framing job. Some framers do it, a lot of framers don't. My framer happens to put in the windows and the exterior doors, but he comes up on a separate time to do that. I don't put on my exterior doors until after all my mechanical is done, especially if I know I'm in a very safe environment. If I'm not in a safe environment, I want to lock up that home as soon as I possibly can, put some temporary locks on it, and get the framer to include the exterior doors with that build. Like on a build today, I had windows arrive today. My framer will start to install those windows tomorrow. So, change for the stairs. Well, okay. As for those stairs on the permits, Val, yeah, I just go ahead and get those changed. If you're changing stairs, that's actually that could be a very structural issue. So you might want to hurry and get those changed and submit those. Now, here's something to keep in mind. I don't submit the changes sometimes to my permitting office. I will just make the change and put them on the tube. So when the inspector comes, they're going to go to the tube. They're not going to go online and look at the plans. They're going to look at the plans on site, and they're not going to see a change has been made. So you can avoid yourself a headache sometimes by not trying to be all honest with. I had a student who thought it was important to tell the permitting office everything. And you don't need to tell them everything. If you have the plans there, they're going to come and measure against those plans, and they're going to inspect against those plans. So that's all that you really need to do, unless it's a major structural issue. I mean, you have to weigh it out. All right. Let's see. Mike C asks, so what should we research and pay for to evaluate building on a steep slope and have a walkout basement? Good question. Have you purchased the land already? If not, you would want to get a geotech report of that land. And if there's a septic requirement on that land, you're going to want to perk test at the same time. So if you haven't purchased the land, you're going to want to ask that seller to purchase a geotech and a perk test if they need a septic as part of the sale of the land. Otherwise, you're buying the land in the dark. I'm dealing with a student right now who the permitting office is not allowing them to put in a septic system because the soils report is saying, catch this, the soils report actually tells them that they need to put in the septic first to determine if the septic is going to work on site before they can build their home. And the permitting office is not allowing them to install a septic system because the geotech said it has to be put in first. And so the permitting office is saying, that seems weird, so we're going to say no. So you never know what you're going to run into, and you're never going to know what kind of really difficult person you're going to deal with. When a geotech puts that in a report, oh man, it's like a death knell to the entire job site. So it would be nice if before you hire a geotech, you say, can you give me a sample bid that you've given from somebody? And you can read in their language what kind of wording they put in there. And that's a geotech that just wants all kinds of liability removed from them. And they want to see it installed first before they will okay it. That's just lack of professionalism. So I hope that answers your question there. Again, when buying some land, get that seller to get full disclosure, and they've got to cough up the money to get full disclosure. They need to really give you, like I told a client, let's go ahead and make an offer on the land. Why? Because we already have the geotech report. We know what it says. We know what kind of overX we need for the property, and I don't have to cut out a lot of trees. So I have knowledge on that, and that's a seller that kind of is ahead of the game by giving all of these things, so they know that the buyer knows what they're getting into. So anyway, I hope that helps. Mike C, Not purchased city sewer system. Okay, city sewer is great. That means you got a quick connection. How far away is that connection? Is it in the street or is it in the street over? How deep is that connection? You can actually go into the street, lift up the manhole cover where the sewer is, take a flashlight down there and look how deep it is. And if you've got a slope and it's shallow, that's okay. But if that house was down below the midline of the street, and then that sewer system was maybe 5 feet down, and your house is going to be below 5 feet, you're going to have to put a grinder station in there to pump all that sewer into that sewer system. I did that on a job up north, and we were putting in the sewer system, and we found out at the last minute before we started to connect the sewer that the house was lower than the grade of the sewer, so we had to put a $15,000 grinder station onto the home, and we had to pump that sewer up the hill so it could go down into the natural gravity fed sewer system. That one lot got toasted. That one lot, when the developer was putting stuff in, didn't care. It says, "Oh, I should put it in below the grade. We'll make the owner put that grinder station in." And again, this is what happens when people buy land without really knowing what's available, what can be done and what can't be done. I've actually taken a camera and shove it into the sewer system, and I follow that camera, and there's a messaging system, a Bluetooth messaging system in that camera that you can actually follow where that camera is, and it will tell you how deep that sewer line is. And some of that, for $600, you can find out in advance what something really is and what something is not before you even purchase it. So a lot of times I tell people, if you're uncertain if there's a sewer pipe sticking up there, you may want to just double check that. So you never know what developers do to you. Sometimes they can leave you and not really tell you what's going on.
Go to Wally R.
Okay, Wally says, ask a question. At what point in the construction stage can you let things idle to wait for the season to change or for funding, etc.? I assume some stage of the envelope must be finished with waterproofing. Very good question. I'm dealing with a student. Her name's Olga. Great student. She's in California building her own home. And boy, it's windy outside. And she is kind of cash flowing her build off and on. And I told her, make sure you have enough to get to the dry-in stage at the very least, but you don't want to stay there for too long. You really want that home roofed. Once you have your ventilation punched through for plumbing and your HVAC ventilation punched through the roof, you can finish off that roof for the most part. Now, there's one piece of advice I can give you. Avoid designing a home with an end wall that has to be painted or stuccoed or rocked on a roof. An end wall is, imagine a roof comes down here and then there's a wall of a home right here. That's called a dead valley, right? And if that dead valley has to have stucco or fascia or batten board or shiplap or rock or whatever it may be on it, then they're going to have to finish that before they finish their roof. If they finish the roof, they're going to destroy the roof and make a mess of it. And this is something a lot of owner builders just don't get. When they design a home, they have all these dead valleys and crickets, and as a result, you can't finish the roof until this is done, especially if it's stucco. So avoid dead valleys and avoid crickets, because that's going to slow that process down, meaning you have to get it done real quick and you won't be able to cash flow it. Keep your roofs simple. Don't have a roof over another roof or a dead valley. And I've have a lot of videos on dead valleys. They're a nightmare. I can actually show you a picture. Well, my phone's off right now, but I was going to show you a picture of an actual dead valley. Just type in dead valley, roof dead valleys on any search engine. Check out the images. You'll see what a dead valley is. Avoid those and you can stay dried in for a long time without having to finish it. Other stages on my program with How to Build Your Own Home, I have a flow chart. I also have another single page that gives you where all the inspections are. And you really want to get through the framing stage and you want to be dried in as quick and as soon as you possibly can. That's the biggest chunk of the money. And if you can get through that, you can hold off for a little bit, but then you really want to get that siding covered and the windows and the door. Once everything's locked and secured, you can really take your time with the build. Wait till you get some more cash flow. Wait till you have a little more buffer, and you take your time, and you can actually do a cost benefit analysis of taking more time, and you can actually save yourself some money. So the more you can cash flow and not have to put it on a bank, doing things yourself, the better. So Mary May says, I love this show. What do you think about using vinyl planks for bathroom floor? Vinyl planks for bathroom. How much moisture can it handle without changing shape? There's depends on the product. If you do some luxury vinyl, and it's a floating luxury vinyl, then it's going to be a little more breathable. Check your product. I use a product called Life Product. I actually get this at a box store, one of the box stores. Check out Life Product, and I've got it in my home, and it lasts forever. I've got a dog that has nails, and she spins on it. She hasn't scratched it up just yet. Phenomenal product. I love luxury vinyl product, but the thicker you can get that product, the better. If you get a luxury vinyl that's not even a 1/4 inch thick, maybe just about a millimeters thick, that's not very, very effective. The thicker the vinyl, the better. And the Life Product at Home Depot, I hate giving a business to some big corporations. I'd rather give it to a small company, but I haven't found a product yet that's a thick luxury vinyl. The Life Proof product at Home Depot is the best I've found. And I've put that in bathrooms before, and it's a floating floor. The only thing you want to watch out for is near the bathtub. You're going to want to make sure you caulk that with a clear caulk, because you don't want water getting out of the bathtub and down and underneath that substrate. And particularly in that area, I do some decking material underneath the tub and inside the bathroom. So if water does get underneath there, it's not going to get all the way to the substrate and swallow that wood. That's what you don't want to see happen. So even tile, and when they grout right next to the tub, it still cracks and it still can get down to the substrate. So if you can protect the substrate, which is that 3/4 inch TNG flooring they put on, if you can protect that with a nice product, and there's all kinds of product out there where you can just protect that, all the better. If you did that, then you can do the vinyl flooring. So let's see. Yikes, 15K. Yeah, that's true. Tyler asks a question. Louisiana states that materials and labor for the entire project must not exceed 75K. Also, if contractors are hired, their materials and labor must be less than 7,500. Would that even be possible?
And that's compared to his question up above, which says, I'm currently not a licensed general contractor.
Okay. That's if you build a home for somebody else. Okay. What they're stipulating there is the handyman clause. And the handyman clause is that you can operate, but you have to operate under this amount of money. You can't operate for anything more than that. In my state, it's $3,500. If you're a handyman, you cannot subcontract to anybody else more than $3,500. And I think that's the same thing here in Louisiana, but they've got a higher threshold. And I would suspect that would be the case in Louisiana, to be the case. And if contractors are hired, meaning a subcontractor is hired underneath you as an owner builder for building somebody else a home. As an owner builder, you can go much higher than that, but I think you're referencing building for somebody else. Okay. Harold Douglas asks, at May Google SPC flooring. Yeah. Okay. SP flooring. I didn't know if that was a question or just a comment. It's just a comment. Okay. Robert, my wife's over here. She's helping me out. What is your experience on decking material on mountain homes, Trex versus treated wood? Do you have any experience with cement poured over metal pans on a raised deck off the ground? I went through a rant this morning, and you're asking a question where I had a rant, okay? And it has to do with Trex. I do not like Trex. I will not support Trex. I will not sponsor Trex. I had a nightmare with a client. I won't mention names, but the client was an attorney, and we built a huge deck out of Trex. And we told him we can't warranty it. We don't like the product. We have no good experience with the product. He says, never mind, put it on anyway. And we did. 6 months later, it started to swell and buckle, and he wanted a warranty. And I said, no, you signed off on this, that we are not going to warranty this. And he threatened a lawsuit with us. Luckily, we had it documented. I was in partnership with another builder, and we got out of that headache. Trex is just sawdust compressed and wrapped in plastic. And if that sawdust gets wet inside, yeah, they've got wax and they try to get a little better with the Trex, but it's still a risk. You puncturing that Trex with screws to nail it down, and right where that screw gets punctured, you have the potential for water to get in there to start to swell that. Plus, the UV damage on them is just notorious. I saw a job just a couple months ago, and the Trex was just flaking off, and it was barely a year and a half old. So sorry, I have no good things to say. Other products are good. Teak wood is good. But then if you have the slats, I could go on forever on this, but if you have the slats that are open, all that weathering is going to get down and destroy and affect and rot the substrate, your beam structures, your support structures. And there's ways to avoid that. You can actually create a pan, a metal pan, a trough that goes up and over the joists, the floor joists, before you put on your teak wood or redwood or cedar, whatever it may be. That way, water, when it gets down, is going to get caught and go out away from the home, and it's not going to destroy that substrate. You can also put some Sika tape and some other material over the joists before you put your wood on. That's also going to help protect it, but it's going to drip along the sides of your floor joists, and they're going to affect that. You don't want water to touch wood at all. And if it does touch wood, you want that wood to be redwood, or you want it to be a more permanent wood that's not going to rot. That's the best way. There's a lot of ways you can protect that out there. I need to do some videos on that. I got a deck coming up here pretty soon. I do prefer, my product is a KM Coatings. You want to write this down, KM Coatings. They have a primer base, a felt mesh, a primer base, and a color, any color you want. And it goes on like pudding. Literally, it goes on like pudding. And once it's on and you put it on, it's like a tacky feel to it. It'll be on there for 15, 20 years with no problem. And it will never get under the substrate. And I put 3/4 inch tongue and groove plywood outside there, and it never gets destroyed. And I put flashing up the house, and I goop that up against the house. It looks just fine. There's a lot of other products, but that one I have found to be the most affordable and the most effective, lasting. So that's it. Wally says, are you in favor of contractors who do more than a few different types of work for a bundled, cheaper deal versus contractors in their own areas? The best contractors are those who have experience in one of the 5 big areas: excavation, framing, roofing, some sort of a siding material, and concrete. And if they have experience, I mean actual working experience, where that's where they made a living at one point, then they're a better general contractor. I've seen general contractors come into the field with just plumbing experience, and they don't understand the structural components. If they have some experience in the structural, and then another area of experience in the mechanical, and it could be plumbing, HVAC, or electrical. If they have a leg in one of those 2 areas, in the mechanical and one into the structural, that's a really, really experienced general contractor, and they have a real good sense for the whole building envelope. If they're just a finished carpenter and they go into general contracting, they're limited on their scope. And so I try to find someone who really has a leg in mechanical and a leg in one of the big areas. For example, I started off as a roofer, went into landscaping, did some excavation, then went into electrical for about a year and a half, was an apprentice electrician for a while, before even learning to manage as a site supervisor job sites. So I have a real good, firm understanding of the mechanical side, and I have a really good understanding of the earth, the structural, the framing, the roofing, the whole envelope of the home. My main strength is structural. In fact, I'm a better contractor up until the finish side, to be honest with you. That's where my strength is, because I'm thinking in advance of so many things down the road. But if you've got a builder who's just a finished carpenter, you'll be limited.
He's talking about subcontractors that can do more than one.
As for subcontractors doing more, I do my own excavation on jobs. I do less on jobs now than I used to, when I used to be a general, I used to do my own roofs, my own dirt work. I did a lot of my own framing, my own landscaping. It got to be too much. And so now I backed up, and now I'm more of a real good manager of job sites. I hope that answers. Did I answer that question right, honey?
No, a subcontractor wants to do multiple different things.
Oh,
for a better,
subcontractors.
cheaper price.
Yeah, bundling. Now I think my wife cleared me up on that. Bundling is not a bad thing. I've got a framer who does all my carpentry, my finished carpentry, all my shelving, and all my hardware, and all my doors and windows and mirrors. He does it all, and I get a better price because of that. You'll find that I had a gentleman who wanted to bid on a home. He wanted to do the foundation and the framing, but those are so far apart and so different that I already had trust in the framer and the concrete people I had, so I kept them separate. But it may be beneficial to bundle them,
Depends on the person.
and that's not a bad way to go. I know general contractors that bundle big things. They bundle their framing and their concrete, but they're really busy, and I found that they don't really have the time to really focus on quality so much. Let's go down here to, let's
That was
see.
Wally again about that.
Okay, an owner builder who is looking to repeat process every so often, what are some of the strategies related to avoiding hefty tax charges? Should operating under an umbrella company be an option? You definitely want to operate under a company, because that's a veil of protection, some degree of protection between you and your own personal assets and your personal. You want a company that's representing the work that you do. And the other thing that you want to focus on is you really can't sell it quick. You can't build and sell. That's what the states really want to shy away from. That's why they want you to be a licensed professional, that they can hold you accountable to the work. If you are doing it, then you're probably not allowed to sell within 2 years, stuff like that. Just check your state guidelines, and they'll help you out with that. What's that?
You're not an attorney.
My wife says I'm not understanding it.
You're not an attorney.
Oh, I'm not an attorney. Yeah, I'm not an attorney. So thanks for the tips, Harold Douglas. Look up. That says, good evening, Miss Melissa, Mr. Keith. Question: appears Home Depot getting into real estate. Any thoughts on ADU metal frame kit for sale? An ADU is an accessory dwelling unit, 540 square foot kit home, $43,000. So I can give you some comments on that. If I go 43,832 divided by, how many square feet was that? 540? 540?
Yeah.
That's $81 a square foot. That's really cheap. That's super cheap. But that's typically without the foundation. More than likely, it's without the foundation. It's also without the underground electrical, underground gas, underground sewer, underground water. So those are going to increase the cost of that square footage. You're going to probably be closer to anywhere from $90 to $110 a square foot. I'm not a fan of kits like that because it has the stigma of modular home or temporary dwelling, and that's not going to hold your equity over time. The minute you have a permanent foundation and you build on that permanent foundation, I don't care how big the home is, it could be 500 square feet. The minute you have a permanent built home on site right there, the valuation is going to be more protected. And my wife would vouch for that as a real estate agent. Let's see here.
I need to look up to clarify a bit.
Yeah. Robert asks, I appreciate you guys. I just purchased the second level of building info, and I'm very pleased. Great. I'm glad it helps. Always improving that. Again, if you haven't been to the site, go to How to Build Your Own Home. And I strongly recommend people take the First Steps course. First Steps course, if you're just thinking. If you do purchase the self-managed course, it includes the First Steps course. And please start with the First Steps course, because it's really going to help you understand, and it's going to help you understand costs. And I go over cost per square foot and how to really determine that in your local market. Okay. At the end of this, if you're listening, we'll put a little description, a coupon code at the bottom of the description for those that are listening. On what we'll put it in there for you. So if you're interested, it just applies to the self-managed package, and we'll give a coupon code for people that are interested today. See see. So I used Decorator's Voyager line on my cabin at 8,000, and the installer that only installs decks said that it is the best product he has ever worked with. A very expensive product, but worth every penny. Yes, I'll have to look into that Decorator's Voyager line. I've seen a lot of those products. A lot of times I just don't build homes in that price range for people. I build high-end custom luxury homes in the desert, and they're not typically building cabins with decks, so I don't run into that too much. However, I am starting to move up in the mountain more with a lot of builds, so I will be looking into more and more products like that. Yeah. It asks, my home is being built in Ocean Shore, Washington. I'm getting two different views of how to approach meeting a new insulation standard for the city. One is similar to your airflow in the crawl space.
And then the next one.
Yeah, you're.
The other is ceiling.
Yeah, the other is sealing the home and using ERV HVAC from Carrier, outdoor heat pump, and Infinity 25VN8 for the interior air handler. It thought maybe FEA and HRV ERV. The sealed home, it would have the framing dried in with zip sheeting, then a layer of rigid from foam, and then another layer of zip, and then siding. Any thoughts? Let your home breathe. I know that the local area might be getting a little bit stickler on trying to seal up that home, but I'm not a fan of that. I'm a fan of having a coat on, but having the coat unzipped. If you're outside and it's super cold, then you want to zip that coat up. But the minute you start to shovel snow or exert any energy, like boiling a pot of hot water in your home, the minute you do that, then there's just nowhere for that heat to go. So you start to sweat. You start to sweat inside that coat. It's the same thing with a home. You start to seal up that home so darn tight that it's got to find a way to go. That's what the ERV's for. It's called makeup air, and they'll bring in fresh air on the inside. But if the electricity is going off and you're boiling hot water and you're heating up that home, it's got to find a way to go someplace. So I used to really think that sealing up a home was great, wonderful. But the older homes that I've really worked on, my Pioneer home, I made comment of this a couple weeks ago. Underneath the cabinetry, there's a vent about that big with grated metal in it, like a screen. And then it has vents on the sides of the homes. Now, my Pioneer part of my home doesn't have any insulation under it, and one day I'll put some rock wool underneath there and it'll be great, but it will still ventilate through the entire home. Inside the home, underneath the crawl space of the home, there's movement of air. It's going to keep everything dry. Anytime you have movement of air, it's going to keep things dry. And when I put some rock wool on there, it'll be very, very comfortable in there. It's kind of cold in the winter, but when I put the rock wool, it'll be just fine. But that's not a completely sealed up home. And it's been around for over 100 years without any rot, without any damage, without any cold condensing surfaces. I've seen homes sealed up so much that you'll see out the plug, some plugs that, the interior plug, and air will get through that plug and it will get close to the outside wall and you'll get a cold condensing surface and you'll see rot, tons of rot right there by that plug. So you're risking it. I'm just being honest, especially in an environment where you live, where it's really, really humid and you've got a lot of sea moisture. I don't know how close you are to the coast, but you've got a lot of moisture in the air, a lot more moisture than I've got. And that's going to find its way through the home, through the walls of the home. And if you don't have it really well designed and intelligently designed, to somebody who knows what they're doing, you run the risk of cold condensing surfaces starting to build up moisture inside the wall. So I'm a fan of leaving your coat open just a little bit. You can stay warm with that. It may not be the perfectly efficient. You may lose a little bit of energy in that, but it's great for the home. Sorry, I could rant on that for forever.
He's 3 blocks from the ocean.
Yeah, if you're 3 blocks from the ocean, you're going to want to let that home breathe. I did a video in Newport Beach, California, about half a year ago. And I walked down the alley of these homes, all right? And just about all of them had rot in the homes because they were poorly designed, no proper flashing. Mildew or moisture from the ocean is landing on that home 24/7, especially at night when the air is a cold condition. and that moisture wants to fall and land on stuff. And that means that the home is never going to dry out. And so I saw paint, just railings, just with wood paint, and you see the wood of moisture getting down there and rotting it. If you can find that one, it's a video I did in Newport Beach, California. Follow that video, and you'll learn a lot on that video. So if you can find it, it's kind of an older video. Let's see here.
Matt Bellin.
Matt Dallin.
Bellin.
Look up. Oh, Bellin. Okay. Matt asks, to follow on that question, is it possible to use zips with the rain screens and still able to breathe? Yes, I was kind of set on using the zip system. You can still do that. Just make sure you do a rain screen. If nobody knows what a rain screen is, you got your shear wall, you got your siding, not your siding, but your OSB or your exterior sheathing of your home. Okay. And then you've got your vapor barrier or moisture barrier. And then you put some slats on the home, and then maybe shiplap across the slabs. Between the shiplap and between the batten board, between all that, there's that air gap. That's allowing for the home to breathe. Okay. Now, as long as your main sheathing is what's he called that? Zip. If that's zip and it's completely sealed, then any moisture that's trying to get in the home, there's that air barrier between the actual fascia of the home and the sheathing of home, and that's what you want to see. Brick homes have that. If you see brick homes, there's like 1.5 to 2 inches of a gap, so that if water does get through the bricks, and I've seen experiments with a fire hose or even a water hose is pointed at brick or rock, and they can see water getting through the other side of that brick. And that's where the rain screen stops. If the water goes down, it's caught in a J channel at the bottom of the brick, and it exits the home. It doesn't get inside that home. That's how powerful a rain screen is, especially in homes along the coast. Anywhere on the coast, you're going to want a rain screen. Okay. Now, if you're in an arid climate like I have, people do this all the time. They just apply shiplap right to the home, because we live in one of the second airest climates in the state, so we're kind of protected. But still, it wouldn't be bad to put rain screens even where I live. But on the coast in a humid environment, it's almost demanded. So that's a Bella. Let's see. Lookup asks, Miss Melissa is a reagent. Wow, very cool. Please do share your thoughts on interest rates and new build loans. Be a real treat bonus. Why don't you go ahead and make a comment on that, honey?
Okay. Well, building loans, Keith and I are constantly meeting with banks trying to find loans with banks that will loan owner builders, and it's getting tight a little bit right now, especially the big banks. They don't want to do it, but maybe your smaller banks and credit unions might work with you a little bit better, especially if you have, like Keith has this really good budget that you can fill everything in, and a lot of them have liked that. Interest rates, I'm not a lender, but interest rates they have, the lenders that I've talked to, they do say the interest rates are going to drop in the fall, but nobody has a crystal ball, of course. And some of the products, you can have a one-time close for construction loans, which is nice for many people that want to lock that in. So there are some options, but it's different in every state and every lender that you go to, a bank, credit union. Yeah. So it's just a matter of asking around. As soon as we find that magic lender, we will let you know.
Yeah, we haven't found one yet. Do ask the lender if there's a way to lock in a different interest rate if it changes. Sometimes if the interest rate goes down and you've already locked in a higher interest rate, ask them, can you make one adjustment? A lot of times they'll allow you to make one adjustment during the course of the build if it happens to drop during that process. Yep. So we'll do some more of those questions. Okay. Husband, he mentioned, let's see here, blocks motion. Your husband, he mentioned he preferred to delve into structural part of building. I feel that's the most important stage, right? It is. It's the scariest part that most owner builders kind of neglect. They neglect the mechanical, the framing, the excavation, the dirt, the soils. They neglect all that. They just want to get in there and put some paint on it and make it look pretty. And that's the easy part. That's what a lot of people know how to do, or at least they can find easier people to do those than all this stuff. So that's why I spend most of my time on the structural side of things. Okay. G. Dot asks, say G. Dot, my lintel over my 19-foot garage door sags, brick over the top of it. Costly repair? Yes, more than likely, because it wasn't structurally designed properly in the first place. That's why it's sagging. I did a report on a home like that, the garage door, it was just sagging. And typically, like on a home I just framed just now, we actually put a metal beam in there because we're supporting such a massive weight above it. And we couldn't use just a typical glue lam or LVL beam. We had to get a metal beam in there. So that's where an engineer kind of messed up all that. See, we're going to end this here pretty quick. Hit that thumbs up if you like the stream. Yes, please hit the thumbs up. We appreciate that. Thanks. Appreciate you guys. Thanks from Lookup. Melissa says, thanks, everyone. We sure love talking with you. Have a fantastic day. With that, we'll end it. We'll start next week. I will start off with some sort of, I don't want to say a rant, but a real poignant thing that we need to really focus on. And we will put this live stream up so people can rewatch it again. And if you want to have questions answered, you can go to howtobuildyourownhome.com, contact the instructor, and I'll try to save those messages. If you cannot be here at the live stream, I'll try to go to those. I had 1 or 2 questions that were emailed to me, but I quickly answered those right away. But if I can't get to those, send them to me through the site, and I'll save them. I'll answer them here so I can give you guys some feedback. Again, this is Keith Couch and Melissa with How to Build Your Own Home. You guys have a great week. We've got windstorms outside, and we're going to go out to dinner right now. So you guys take care.